Abdullah was dead. His body lay still, wrapped in the white shroud, and the Quran that he had kept by his side all his life rested on his chest. His children were crying, his wife was whispering prayers, and the people of the town stood in silence. They all knew Abdullah was not a rich man, he was not a leader, and he was not someone with fame or power. But he was a man who had lived with the Quran in his heart and on his tongue. Now he was about to be buried with the Quran, just as he had wished. The grave was dug deep and wide, and when the time came, they placed him gently into the earth. The Quran was lowered with him, pressed against his chest. The Imam recited prayers, the soil was poured back, and the grave was closed. Then something happened, something no one would forget. The air grew calm, the birds sang louder than usual, and a strange peace spread around the cemetery. The people who were there felt it in their hearts. They knew Abdullah's love for the Quran had followed him even into his grave. But the story does not begin here. To understand why this man was buried with the Quran, you must know his life. Abdullah was born in a small town in a simple home, the son of a poor tailor. His father worked hard every day to earn bread for the family, but he always made time to take Abdullah to the masjid. He would wake him up before the sun rose, wash his face, and walk with him in the cool morning air. Inside the masjid, his father would sit with him and teach him the Quran. The boy struggled at first. The Arabic letters were difficult, his tongue stumbled, and sometimes he grew tired. But his father was patient. He would repeat the letters again and again until Abdullah learned them by heart. Slowly, the boy's lips grew used to the recitation, and soon the words flowed from him with ease. As Abdullah grew older, his love for the Quran grew stronger. He was not like the other boys. While they ran in the fields, laughed, and played games, Abdullah often sat in a corner whispering verses to himself. The people in the town noticed this. Some admired him, but many laughed. They said, "What good is this boy? He will never earn money like this. He spends his time with words when he should be working with his hands." Abdullah heard their words, but he did not care. His father told him, "Let them laugh, my son. The Quran will be your light when all else fades." These words stayed with Abdullah all his life. When he became a young man, Abdullah took over his father's shop. He became a tailor, just like his father. Day after day, he sat on a wooden bench, stitching clothes for people in the town. His hands worked quickly, the needle going in and out, but his lips never stopped moving. While he sewed, he recited verses softly to himself. Customers often smiled when they heard him. Some respected him for it, but others shook their heads. They said, "Abdullah, you waste your time. If you put your mind to business instead of reciting, you could be rich by now." Abdullah only smiled. He would answer them with the same words every time. "Riches will not follow me to my grave, but the Quran will." He married a simple, pious woman. She was not wealthy, and she did not wear jewelry or fancy clothes. But she shared Abdullah's love for the Quran. She would sit with him at night, listening to him recite. Sometimes she would ask him to repeat a verse because she liked the way it sounded. Abdullah loved those moments. Their house was small, their food was little, but their hearts were full. They had children, and from the time the children could speak, Abdullah taught them the words of Allah. He would sit them down after Fajr and recite slowly, asking them to repeat after him. The children grew up hearing the Quran every day. But life was not easy. Abdullah's shop did not bring much money. There were days when he had no food to give his children except bread and water. His wife sometimes cried in the kitchen, worrying how they would survive. But Abdullah always comforted her. He would say, "Do not fear. The Quran teaches us that Allah provides. If we hold to His book, He will never leave us." True to his words, even in the hardest times, help always came. A neighbor would bring food, or an old customer would pay for clothes he had forgotten. Somehow, they always survived. Years passed. Abdullah's beard turned white, and his back became bent from long hours at the sewing table. Yet the Quran never left his side. Even when his eyes grew weak, he would hold the mushaf close and recite. Sometimes his children begged him to rest, but he would shake his head. "If I stop reciting," he said, "my heart will die before my body." Then came the illness. Abdullah grew weak, so weak he could no longer sit in his shop. His sons had to take over the sewing. He stayed at home, lying on his bed, the Quran resting on his chest. Every day, he asked his family to read with him. His voice was soft, sometimes broken, but he never stopped reciting. His wife wept beside him, knowing the end was near. Abdullah looked at his children and gave them his final request. "When I die," he said, "bury me with this Quran. Do not leave me alone in the dark. Let the words of Allah be my companion." His children were surprised. They asked, "Father, is this right?" Abdullah nodded. "The Quran has been my light in life. I want it to be my light in death." One evening, as the sun set and the adhan for Maghrib echoed through the air, Abdullah took his last breath. His hand rested on the Quran. His lips moved slowly, whispering the final verses he could remember, and then he was gone. The family wept. The neighbors came. The news spread quickly. Abdullah, the tailor who always recited Quran, had died. The people gathered for his janazah. Many remembered how they had mocked him in life, but now tears filled their eyes. The imam came forward and the family told him of Abdullah's request. At first, the imam hesitated. It was unusual, but he thought of Abdullah's life and his love for the Quran. Finally, he agreed. When the time came, they lowered Abdullah into the grave. His children placed the Quran on his chest, and the imam recited prayers. The soil was poured, the grave was closed. The people stood silently, but then they felt something they could not explain. A calmness spread over the cemetery. The birds sang loudly as if praising Allah. The air felt lighter, softer. Those present said their hearts were at ease. They knew something unusual had happened. That night, several villagers had dreams. They saw Abdullah sitting in his grave, the Quran glowing beside him like a lamp. His face was peaceful, and he was reciting softly, the verses echoing in the darkness. Some saw angels standing near him, shielding him from fear. When these dreams spread, people in the town were amazed. They realized the Quran had truly become his companion in death, just as he wished. From that day on, Abdullah's story became a lesson for all. People who had neglected the Quran began to open it again. Young boys memorized it. Old men who had forgotten the words tried to learn again. Mothers recited while cooking, and fathers recited before sleep. The town that once mocked Abdullah now carried his memory with pride. Years later, parents would tell their children, "Remember the man who was buried with the Quran. Remember Abdullah, the tailor. He lived poor, but he died rich. The Quran was his companion in life and in the grave." And the children would listen with wide eyes, promising themselves that they too would hold tightly to the Book of Allah, so that one day, when they lay in the earth, the Quran would not abandon them. And so Abdullah's story lived on. A story not of wealth or power, but of love, devotion, and the eternal light of the Quran.